This episode is brought to you by North Texas Honda Dealers. North Texas Honda Dealers, they're here to help.
He has time, launches it to the end zone. Touchdown! Terrence Williams!
The throw goes to the right side for Crabtree. It's caught. He he's going hard there. Red Raiders.
Bunty up the 10. Bunty up the right sideline.
Yep, he's got to go. He's tackled. Sam Houston wins it. The Bearcats capture their first FCS championship.
Hello, and welcome to the Republic of Football. I'm your host, working with about a quarter of a voice I usually have. I'm Ishmael Johnson, your college editor here at Dave Campbell's Texas Football. Alongside me is somebody also operating with a fraction of the voice they usually have. That's Carter Yates, our college writer. How you doing, man? No, that's a great intro.
What you hear right now is the voice of a man who gave 110% out there the last 3 days. I left it all out on the field. You're getting the last bit of my voice I got today.
The very last bit. And somebody who has also gave it our all this weekend, Mallory Hartley. Mallory, how are you doing?
I'm all right. I'm here. I'm alive.
We're all basically the same.
All kind of dead.
Sounds like we're in a library right now.
It really does. Yeah,
A
we're in
library?
our studio. I mean, if you're
because
listening.
we're talking
Because
quietly.
it's just like, this is like ASMR podcast-ish right here.
I can see that. I can see that.
Yeah, so if you're wondering why we sound very drained, it's because this is our first day back in the office after a full weekend of being down in Houston at the convention center for the THSCA Coaching School Convention. Kind of our unofficial kickoff to the season. Every year we at Dave Campbell's Go, we set up a booth, do a bunch of interviews. This year had a little bit of a different setup. We had our typical booth where we had our interviews going on. But then Mallory and Pickle, of course, if you paid attention last Friday, and if you kind of just knew us behind the scenes, you kind of know we have a Friday show coming this year to Friday nights
Yes.
at the NTTV studios in North Texas. And so, naturally, as the skilled producers that they are, they managed to swing a private interview room where they got countless high school coaches and including, but what was it, 10 FBS coaches?
9.
Yeah, about 9.
Most of the coaches that were there, we got.
Yeah,
so that
which
was
was awesome.
Cool. That was awesome.
Really, really cool. And so we had a private interview room, fully, multicam set up, fully produced, basically ready to upload almost. Like very few editing involved. It was very,
Yeah, it was
very good setup.
5 camera setup. It was
Lighting,
It was
all that.
insane. Yeah, the lighting. Pickle did a fantastic job with setting everything up.
Yeah,
and
so, yeah,
her vision's insane.
Give yourself some credit here. You also
Yeah.
are part of that. So, they interviewed a bunch of high school coaches. We'll be posting some of the college coaches. If you want to watch the high school stuff, again, Friday nights, they'll be rolling those out throughout the season.
Yes.
For that show. But the college coaches will be, rolling them out over in due time. Mike Craven was able to sit down with quite a few of them. And if you're wondering, well, it's like, oh, Ishmael, just sounds like you guys just did your job for multiple days. Well, not wrong, right? But if you've never been to coaching school, it is probably the most social event we go to.
Yeah.
Right? Like probably second to like state, or no, probably for state, I would say second, because with state, you can kind of get away a little bit. Like we have our own radio booth typically, and you can hole up there and just kind of talk to us. No matter where you go at coaching school, there's going to be somebody you need to talk to. Somebody's going to see you. Hey, somebody you haven't seen in a year. Somebody you haven't been out to a game to. So whether they're an AD, a coach, something, former player who's now a grad assistant. I don't know. They bring their whole staffs. And so you're kind of like socially on for, what is it, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, 4 days.
3.5 days straight, pretty much.
Yeah, 3.5 days straight. 3 nights, by the way, because afterward people usually go socialize.
Yes.
There's a bunch of we had a social, went really well. And so, yeah, you're just kind of on from like 7 a.m. till sometimes midnight or later.
Yeah.
And it's a lot.
It's literally, Ashley described it as like it's a sprinting marathon because you're running long distances while sprinting at full speed. So you're just drained.
Yeah.
Like all aspects of your body are just drained, like mentally, physically, emotionally drained, but it's a blast.
Yeah,
it really is.
It really is a blast.
It's a really cool event, and I don't think anybody else in the state or in the country does something like that.
I was about to say
it's very unique.
Well, it was 16,066 coaches that were there. Is that what Steph I saw tweeted
that's
out?
insane.
Yeah.
That's like such a huge number.
That was the final number.
It's crazy how many legends you get under one roof, kind of.
Right.
And because whether it's, former players, a lot of the best former players are now coaches, and a lot of former Texas high school coaches are now in college coaches. And you get to see them all. Like, I think the biggest thing I took away, this was my first one, obviously.
Yeah.
Was every time I've talked to these coaches before, it's all in a press conference setting. And everyone's all buttoned up and rigid. And, I got to make sure I'm not giving away too much and saying, exactly what my SID wants me to say. But you just kind of get to be a fly on the wall sometimes and see them interacting with each other and how they normally talk to each other. So that's pretty cool to see everyone's personality a little bit more.
Well, and y'all got to sit in on the FBS coaches panel, right? So we had 11 of the 13?
10 of the 11 of the
13 FBS coaches, head coaches in Texas, all on the same panel.
Yes, so the only ones that weren't there were Dave Aranda, whose father passed, I believe, a couple weeks ago, so they had the memorial on this weekend, and then Jimbo, who just didn't show up, and so, which is a surprise. 11 of the 13, and it was very, even that, it's quote-unquote an interview, but, even that's kind of dressed down, right? It's very much they're very much because one, they have to be kind of candid because it's a bunch of other coaches in the room.
Yeah,
and
it's all high school coaches.
Yeah, it's all high school coaches in the room. And so you kind of have to, they're kind of, it's partial PR, but it's partial real talk, right? Where they're like, hey, here's how we operate, kind of like that. But it's also you can't piss the room off because, you have to ingratiate yourself. But when I was talking to Carter before coaching school, because, usually when we go to an event, we, quote-unquote, cover the event, right? We come up with a piece or a video or something. We come out with some product, right? And we do have interviews with coaches. But I told Carter and Corey, our non-FBS insider, who both of them were there for the first time, it's a networking event, right? You're there to, legitimately talk to not even just head coaches, LCs, grad assistants, position coaches, get in contact with those guys because that's who – especially the guys below the head coaches, that's who the ones you want to get to know. And that's the most dressed down they're going to be ever, right? You mentioned the former players. Lindsey Scott was at the Texas State Social, right? Former UIW quarterback. He's now on staff there. De'Aaron King, it was the first time I saw him with the SMU staff, right? And so, guys like that who just oh, man, I remember you. And, just getting to chat him up and not in an interview setting, right? You're not there with a mic in his face, right? And that's what it is. It's getting a lot of stuff that, not even necessarily stuff you're going to use, but just getting them familiar with your face and getting them just familiar with everything. So, I think, I don't know, if you're somebody in the media, I think it's an invaluable event. I mean, a lot of our friends from 247 were there. The Athletic, Sam Khan was there. I think next year it's back in San Antonio, which I think is a little bit more central of a location for a lot of people.
No, it's going to be in Houston next year, too. It's on a 2-year.
Because one Step said it was back in San Antonio, but really? I originally thought so. I originally thought it was 2 and 2. Cool. I think Step said it was back in San Antonio. I'll double check on that. But regardless of where it is, if you're in the media, and you're listening if you're one of our colleagues in the media, definitely go check it out. Carter, I guess before we get to some of the other stuff we're going to talk about. By the way, I didn't get to the rundown. Big 12 Media Days also happened. You listen to our live show. We're going to recap that a little bit. And then AAC and Conference USA Media Days are next week. We'll be there as well. And then we have an interview. Mike Craven grabbed Joey McGuire during Big 12 Media Days, so we'll run that interview. Before we get to those, though, Carter, like you mentioned, this was your first one, and what were your thoughts overall? Because we tried to warn you and try to prep you in terms of this is what's going to happen. This is kind of what it is, and how did it? Was it crazier than you thought? Was it about what you expected, or?
Oh, it was definitely crazier than I thought it was going to be, just from the sheer amount of people that were there.
Yeah.
But the experience in general was I don't think you can even put into words how just cool it is to be there and see that many people involved with Texas high school football and college football. So overall, I thought it was I will say once in a lifetime experience, but I hope to go to many more. It was the first one I went to. Mallory brought up the coaching panel with all the Texas college coaches, and I thought that was extremely interesting because Craig Way emceeing that, he goes through. I mean, they talk about transfer portal. They talk about NIL.
It's the hard-hitting stuff, yeah.
They talk about the future of conference realignment, and he literally asked Sark, he's like, where do you see college football in 5 years? And Sark goes, thanks.
Yeah. Really, I'm the one you asked about that. Yeah.
Well, duh. You have to.
Because you have Sark there with Texas, right? He's obviously the guy who just left the Big 12, is about to go to the SEC. Then you have Sonny Dykes and Joey McGuire, who are entrenched in the Big 12 in a Power 5 conference. Dana Holgerson's Houston. He just moved from Group of 5 to Power 5. Jeff Traylor's an American Athletic Conference program, Group of 5, talking about, people trying to pluck his players that he's developed at UTSA before. And then there's Eric Morris and Casey Keeler, who one has just moved up into Group of 5 from Conference USA
FCS
to American. Then Sam Houston just went from FCS to FBS. So it's like every different market in college football is represented on that one stage. And it was really, really interesting to see all of them bounce ideas off of one another, talk about different experiences they have with each other. I think that was kind of the highlight of the weekend for me too. And because it was a little bit informal, like you've got Jeff Traylor and Joey McGuire, who are former Texas high school coaches. So they are, they were sitting in the audience a couple years ago, listening to college coaches. You've got GJ Kinney and Eric Morris, who their fathers were Texas high school coaches. So they have a lot of respect for those people in the room. And I think that was kind of like, I even tweeted the picture about it. I was like, lots of guys who know ball in this picture right here. It's literally 10 of the smartest football minds in Texas.
I was about to say that's an image that you're not going to see every day, right?
No.
Literally like them all together. And I think one of the interesting questions that I think they asked him about was not just NIL in college, but NIL in high school, right? That was a big thing where it's like you're seeing some states start to do that. And I feel like universally, and I think Rhett Lashley probably has a little bit more experience in this with others than others. He mentioned Florida, and he was like, the scene there is insane. He's like, with NIL, you can just hop and go to different high schools. And he was like adamant. He's like, after experiencing that and recruiting that and all that, he's like, you don't want to get in on that, right? He was like, it was like a forewarning to like the UIL and to high school coaches saying, and I think in the whatchamacallit, I think for the most part, they want, if there is NIL in high school, they want to be able to police it pretty well in terms of like not being able to let kids like transfer and like get bidded out, things like that. And I think that's what he was hinting towards, because NIL I think will be, I don't know if it'll be in the near future, but I think players will be able to make money off their name in high school. But the idea of like no guardrails, kind of how it is in college, I think that's what he was hinting towards in terms of like, don't let it become like Florida, because it's like the haves and the have-nots just like completely rip the sport apart. So
what was the general consensus on NIL? Like, was it Rhett Lashley? Like, what everyone was kind of agreeing with him?
I think everybody for the most part was like, the game is really nice as it is here. And I think that when you have some, I use Rhett Lashley as an example because he coached at Miami. He knew how he knew how Florida operated in terms of their high school sphere. And so I in my opinion, I think he kind of led the charge on like, I've seen how it works elsewhere and we have a good thing here. So it was kind of like a forewarning, I guess you can say, of like, don't let it. And then of course I think Joey McGuire and Jeff Traylor, like you mentioned, former coaches in this high school coaches in this state, they kind of know the game that they love and they don't want to see it change in that way.
Right.
So there is something to be said of like, you need to be progressive and change with the times.
I was about to say, I think NIL will be coming eventually. I just don't think it'll be like the no guardrails that we see in the NCAA.
And we don't need that.
No one has looked at what the NCAA has done in rolling out NIL and been like, wow, that went seamlessly. That was really, we should just do that for high school too.
Right.
But the thing that I don't understand about it too is high school, even more so than college, already has systemic inequalities.
Sure, 100%.
In all of these schools. I mean, it is all about your independent school district. It's all about the resources you have.
It's all about your income around the area.
And your booster club that you have too, because the booster clubs are what pay for all your transportation, your team meals, your equipment, and things like that. So what does this NIL and transfer portal in high school mean? Like, okay, I am pretty good at my inner city high school, and now I just get to go out to the suburbs, and then how does that work with like where is he moving to?
Sure.
Who's putting him up?
Create more of that kind of divide that we don't need,
Yes.
I think it accentuates that divide. I think a little bit more.
It does.
I think it's what the worry is. Which I'm not saying there isn't stuff to worry about now, because I think you're completely right on the front about like there already haves and have-nots, right? And I think that
this would just exacerbate.
I was about to say it would just exacerbate it and make the kind of the gap even greater, right? Like the South Oak Cliff thing, that kind of does that program even have the chance if it can't compete with like the other schools that are attracting away the players that are able to stay there, right, and do what they kind of did to build up, right? Mm-hmm. Is that even possible if their players are just allowed to like, actually no, I'm gonna go up north to because they're giving me NIL or things like that.
And I understand it for college too, because they were making video games for college.
Right.
They give their schools hundreds of $1 million in revenue.
Right.
We can really unpack.
I was about to say this could be an episode
completely
by itself.
We might have to do our own episode about this too, because I just don't know, and maybe I'm just ignorant, and I just haven't been paying attention. I don't know how much money to these schools like high school athletes.
I don't think it's even for the schools. I think it's just the idea of a player being able to do it for himself.
Yeah.
Right. Like an idea of like, I'm not saying, let's say Quinn Ewers back at South Lake Carroll. I'm not saying he wasn't like, he obviously gave South Lake Carroll some exposure, but like he wasn't making them money. But like, I think the idea is that Quinn Ewers probably should have been able to make a little bit of money off being Quinn Ewers in high school.
Well, Quinn Ewers also could have gotten some money being a lifeguard.
He also could have. I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. There's a debate. There's a debate here.
Working at a Subway like everyone else is doing.
There's a debate here. There's a debate.
Good point.
There's a debate
because
here.
I understand when it's like you're a college athlete, like you physically cannot get a job.
Right.
High school,
I was about to say they bar you.
Job.
They bar you. They also bar you from getting like anything.
They
else,
bar you
basically.
from getting a job.
Yeah.
So you are, one, not able to have a job. You
Right.
are, two, generating hundreds of $1 million in revenue for your school. Of course, you should be paid.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
High school, what I don't understand is you got a lot of free time in high school. I mean, I know a lot of these guys are really specializing, doing a lot of QB training and whether or not whatever positions they play, but like you're not generating $100 million. You do have a lot more free time. This is one that it's going to happen at some point.
Sure.
And I'm not trying to be like the old head, like, they shouldn't be getting paid.
Right.
Whatever. I'll wait and see how it rolls out in the very distant future.
And I think that's going to be a very diligent discussion
Yeah.
if it does happen in the near future. So
Right. So y'all saw a bunch of like individual press conferences with college head coaches.
Yes.
Which two did you find the most interesting and why? I didn't get to see most of the press conferences.
Yeah, you were stuck in the bunker.
I was. So I'm interested to hear kind of y'all's takeaways on some of the head coaches that y'all got to listen to. And
to me, Jeff Traylors was really nice. I always like listening to him talk anyway.
Yeah.
But they asked him about the AAC playing football on Friday nights, which he was not for. Very much not for.
Right.
Honestly, it's funny because some coaches will be like, I like to be out recruiting then or whatever.
Yeah.
But he was straight up like, no, they're gonna be at the Smithson Valley game. No one's gonna be at our game. Like, he was like, no one's coming to the Alamo Dome if we're playing on Friday.
Especially in Texas.
Yeah.
Like, that's,
he said
that's something you don't mess with.
He literally said we're a 12-year-old program. No one's coming to UTSA when Smithson Valley and Steele are playing on Friday.
Right. Yes.
Like, there's nobody gonna be there. So he gave a really good answer about that. But he also talked about somebody asked him about GJ Kinney. He talked about his relationship with him. And that was really good. And the other thing was somebody asked him about what's kept him at UTSA because he's seen his name pop up for some jobs. And he was very candid in saying, like, I hope to be here. And like, this is like, there's a reason why. Like, the city's incredible. Like, he's not a small town coach, right? He's in a major city, in a major market, and he's legitimately building something up.
I was going to say, look what he's built.
Yeah, they didn't have a facility before he got there.
Right.
He has a facility now. And now he made a joke about like, yeah, if you give me the facility, I'll never ask for anything again. Then NIL happens. He's like, we kind of need some money for NIL to help all these. So like, he's made some jokes about that. But he gave some really candid answers about that kind of stuff. I saw him, Lashley, Sonny Dykes, and there's one of Shane. I saw the end of Shane Beamer, who's there as well. Shane Beamer
that's right.
and Matt Rule were the only out-of-state coaches here.
That's right.
Which is funny. I heard Matt Rule kind of like through the grapevine. I heard that Matt Rule heard that Shane Beamer was on the docket, and then like An hour later, Matt Rule went on the
Had his own
came
press
on the
conference.
docket. So I was like, interesting.
Because Craven was saying that the MC of the presser was like, so anyone want to talk to Matt Rule?
Yeah, and so like by the end of all the interviews,
sure?
it was like scheduled at 4:30.
Why
Matt Rule,
not?
and I was like, okay,
Why
no,
not?
no, why not? If I'm an out-of-state coach and I see Shane Beamer on there, I was like, yeah, get me on
Get
there.
me on there.
Why is he
Like,
not?
I
Why is he
represent
there?
Texas
Matt Rule
more.
also, and Matt Rule also has so much of an impact, on Joey McGuire. And a bunch
sure.
of the
Yeah,
guys.
Sure.
right.
There. I would say my two favorite pressers. So I'm gonna go one presser. Mac Brown came.
That was yes.
That was really cool. And
I actually bumped
Did
into Mac
see
Brown on
that.
accident.
Look,
You did?
So I was leaving the Shane Beamer presser, and I was going to because it was right across from where our interview booth was, and like I was
That's
on my
right.
phone and I was like, those hallways are crazy, and so once you like start heading down one, you're not really paying attention because like they all look the same.
because you're in the fun house.
It's it's basically like a maze. And so I'm looking down on my phone, and so I'm like, I'm about to make a turn, and I like just before like he's about right there where Carter is, and so I'm just like, yeah, I just no, but I like bucked. I was like, oh, sorry, coach, and like he was like, oh, no problem, just like in a typical Mac Brown way, and I was like, I just bumped into Mac Brown. That's weird.
I did see I saw that. I don't know who took the picture, but it might have been Roach, but Mac Brown and Steve Sarkisian got a picture together.
Yeah,
That
they were
was pretty cool.
That's who it was. It was Sark, and then Mac was after him.
Right. Okay.
And look, I'm trying to be a Big J journalist now, but
Go for
I mean,
it.
look, I grew up a Texas guy. I went to UT, obviously. So seeing Mac Brown, who's
Your
kind of
fanboy came out.
It was the first like coach who, when I loved football, he was the coach of my favorite team. So getting to ask him a question about like his favorite moments from Texas versus Texas A&M rivalry. That was very cool. By the way, those 3 moments, they're on Instagram. You should go watch the video. It was a really cool answer. But Ricky Williams breaking the rushing record against Texas A&M. He beat Texas A&M one time with 8 passes in the entire game through 1 pass in the second half.
Oh, what year was that? I remember that.
Because he said Darryl Royal one time beat him with 0 passes.
That's great.
So he tried to do that too. And then obviously the last kick in 2011. And then I'm going to go not presser, and I'm going to go coaching clinic. And I were there for Rhett Lashley. Rhett Lashley literally went through the first half of his game versus Maryland, play by play, dissecting what went right and what went wrong in each game. And I give him so much credit too, because it was a game they lost. It was a road game versus Maryland, and he shows you the first half we should have been up by 17 points, and it's this play, this play, these mistakes, why we weren't. I thought he could have easily gone in there and be like, here's my best game.
Right.
And here's why I'm an awesome coach. And yes, he's a great coach, but he shows a lot you can nitpick in there too, which I thought was really cool.
That's really cool.
I think, when he went, so like, I don't think I explained that in the beginning, where it was like coaching school is also clinics and panels and things like that and PowerPoint presentations. So yeah, Rhett Lashley was talking, I think it was like called in-game adjustments or something like that. And yeah, the thing that I loved is how detailed he got, where it was like, this is actually a good play call. We just didn't execute it right. Or this wasn't the right play call because I put this kid in a position that he's not. Like he mentioned his tight end a couple times, right? Yep. Where it was like, that's a position I put him in where he had to make this block. He's not physical enough to get off this block.
He's blocking like a DN.
Yeah, he's blocking like a defensive end, but he was more of a receiving tight end. He was like, that's my fault because I called this play that made him make this block. He got blown up. Defensive player made a play. That's on me, right? Essentially, that's on me. People look at the tape and say, "Oh, that tight end messed up." I was like, "Well, that's not what his specialty is. He didn't have the blocking tight end in, or didn't make the right call." So he, like Carter said, he was very like transparent in terms of like, "There's where we went wrong. Here's where we didn't." They messed up one play once, and then he talked about like, "That was a good play call. We just didn't make it. We're going to go back to it again." And then like they did, and then it was successful. So it was like a lot of like very transparent stuff like that.
Funny story about that. I don't remember who I was talking to. It might have been Craven, but all I heard from the conversation was Craven saying like, Coach Lashley was talking about, the whole first half of their game against Maryland. And I thought to myself, I asked Craven, I was like, did somebody stand up in his press conference and go, hey, can you go through the whole first half of the SMU Maryland game? And I'm like, that's the game they lost. Who asked that? But then that made sense. And they're like, no, that was actually just a panel that he was on, like an in-game adjustments panel. And I was like, okay, I thought it was in the press. I was like, who the heck stood up and asked that question?
Billy Embody. I love you, Billy. But no, Billy Embody's just standing up. He's like, hey, can you just go through that whole game again?
A bunch of like 8 other journalists.
I wanted to ask that question.
Billy again? No.
Okay, I thought that was funny though.
Coaching school was a lot of fun.
It was
I
fun.
definitely have a
Well,
lot
we
of
were in that Rhett Lashley clinic. He's like, a lot of people, they come up with something prepared. I just want to come in and talk ball with you guys. I was like, let's
go.
Yeah,
let's go.
Well, that's what I was telling Carter. I was like, obviously I want to get interviews and all that stuff, but like just hear these guys talk ball because like I'm not the biggest X and O's guy,
right?
And so I like to hear them talk about hear their verbiage, hear their concepts, and like.
Oh, wait, there's no one that knows the game better than them.
Exactly. Like I now know SMU's offside strategy, which like again I'm not gonna say it because it's stuff he said in the interview, but like I now know what their philosophy is on offsides when they draw on offsides on offense, right?
Right.
He walked you through it, and I was like, that's something I didn't.
That's genius,
that's something you like think you have an idea about, but like when you see him actually break it down, it's like no. Here's our literal like 1, 2, 3 steps of like when this happens, what we do, and it's like, oh, that's awesome. Like I love looking for that now in a game.
Football is, a lot of people say, a simple game.
Yeah.
But it is shocking when you see a head coach talk about how complicated and how nuanced it is.
I was about to say, how many terms like do you hear and you're like, what is that?
I
what
think I know ball. And
does
when I
that
walked
mean?
in there, I was like, I don't really know ball.
Right.
You think you know it, and then you know.
So like I said, coaching school was a lot of fun. We're going to get to our Big 12 interviews, Big 12 recap and our interview with Joey McGuire. Like I said, Mike Craven mentioned him. But before we do, Houston, it's very hot in Houston. It was very hot in Houston.
It was steamy.
It was very steamy. What if I told you that there is a college apparel brand that is very nice in the summer, very light?
Would have been nice if you told me before we got there.
I'm telling you after so you know for next year. Okay. Home Field Apparel is our beautiful, beautiful sponsor of the Republic of Football Podcast Network. Every individual show has their own promo code you can use, ours for the Republic of Football, and for the company as a whole is DCTF. DCTF gets you 15% off your first-time purchase at Home Field Apparel. Literally, almost every Division I program in the state has their brand on Home Field Apparel. You can go shop. The newest one was, of course, North Texas, which you mentioned before. An incredible drop. I'll let you do that just for this read.
Yay.
It was an incredible drop. I still need to get that Super Pit sweater, but I'll wait till the colder months to do that. I got my Lamar hoodie, which I should have worn inside. I should have just sucked it up in the heat and just wore it today. Mallory got her TCU shirt last week or a couple weeks ago. It's fantastic. Again, you're not going to get any better vintage college designs officially licensed, right? They collaborate with the school to learn their history, to learn all their imagery, and they make sure that the fans love what they put out. If you want a shirt that commemorates a 1965 golf championship, guess what? Home Field probably has it, right? A 1970 baseball, softball championship, Home Field's going to have it, right? They literally entrench themselves in your college's history to make sure that they are representing your school very well. So over 150 colleges to choose from, including your favorite teams. Plenty of our in-state programs have them. I mentioned if you want to support any of our podcasts on the Republic of Football Network, they all have their own individual code. Gets you the same deal, 15% off your first-time purchase. All right, Mallory, I mentioned a little bit about Big 12 Media Day. Joey McGuire, Texas Tech head coach, was a very popular man there, but somehow we were able to snag him for an exclusive. Mike Craven brought him over to our booth, cornered him, and basically held him up by the collar.
Held him hostage until we could put a mic
Held him up by the
him.
collar and said, listen here, old man. We put you on the cover last year. You need to be – no, I'm kidding. He was great to us. So here's our interview one-on-one with Joey McGuire.
I don't even know if I need to introduce you. Here with Texas Tech head coach Joey McGuire, former cover boy of Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine. Coach, I wanted to ask you first off, what was scarier, giving your daughter away or climbing that crane?
Oh, that's easy, giving my daughter away. That crane was a lot of fun.
You're insane. You're an insane person. 220
feet. I did ask them. They wouldn't let me. I said, hey, could we figure out how I could bungee off of this? And they were like, no, Coach, we're not doing that. So giving my daughter away, that was an emotional weekend, but it was really a lot of fun. We had a blast, and Joe and his family. It was really cool because you're talking about a dude from Long Island, New York. So all these New Yorkers, full-blown Italian, come down. And this is how it starts. This is no lie. I meet his groomsmen, and it goes, I'm Vinny. I'm Tony, I'm Anthony, I'm Dom. And I said, well, I'm Joey. And they go, oh, we got a Joey. So this is how it started. It was so good.
That's a brave guy to date a coach's daughter. I'd imagine that's a guy who's got some guts.
Well, he's in construction, and he's Joe Tocco from Long Island, so could be in the mob. No, he's man, he has been incredible. You know, and Reagan, she's an artist. She's kind of different and quirky and funny, and man, he just lets her be the best. That's what I love about him. He allows her to be her, and he just laughs at her. And so that was really cool. That's where he won me over, was allowing Reagan to be Reagan. And, you know, that's when I knew they were supposed to get married.
Speaking of your other kid, Garrett's over in Nebraska. I saw you posting some photos out there. I was talking to your better half. They said y'all were out there visiting him. What's it like to have a son in the profession? You knew he was going to go into the profession, but being at a place like Nebraska, working for a man like Coach Rule that you respect so much, what has that been like?
It's been awesome. I mean, we talk every day. Well, I'll say that. There were 2 weeks that he was really upset with me. We've battled head-to-head on some recruits, and I don't know. I mean, it was a tough 2 weeks because I don't know who he got mad at, and you know, I kind of backed off a little bit and kind of let him work through it. But you know, I love watching what they're doing. I believe so much in what they're doing. I mean, his whole staff will be at coaching school next week, you know, and so the respect that they have for this state and really how they're recruiting the state's, you know, pretty impressive. But, you know, he's just growing, you know, and that's the one thing I asked him when I got the tech job. I said, hey, would you want to come work with me? And he said, you know, at some point I do, but this was whenever he was in Carolina. He said, Dad, when I'm in Carolina, I'm Coach McGuire. When I'm in Lubbock, I'm your son. And when I come work for you, I want to be Coach McGuire. And that was pretty dang mature for a guy to feel that way. And I totally got it. And, man, there's no better guy to work for that's going to pour into him. And so I'm excited he's with Matt.
We had Jalen Hutchings and Tony Bradford over here earlier today. They were arguing about who is liked more by you.
Oh, my God.
Would you like to settle this debate once and for all?
No, I love both of them the same. And you know what's funny is they probably were arguing who loves them more, my wife or you know, as far as literally those two guys. So I got a quick story about the D-line. So every Thursday we have a position group over at our house. And most of them will come out and sit on the back porch and do something with me. Or we have a game room, so they'll go upstairs to the game room. I'll go up there. And so I'm sitting there waiting for all the D-line to come out. And they're all inside. So I stick my head in there and I said, hey, Boog, are you going to come out and eat with me? And he goes, no, aren't you going to come in and eat with Miss Debbie? And so, like, I'm telling you, the D-line, they're the first ones after the game when she's on the field. We've won a big game. They're, you know, hugging her and congratulating her. They have a really good relationship. So it's funny, if you would have asked them who Miss Debbie liked better, that would have been a real argument.
There we got a fight.
Yeah, you would have been in trouble.
How important is having a supportive partner like Debbie to, like, be successful as a college coach, just with the recruiting and the hosting and all the stuff that wives have to do in this profession?
I mean, it's huge. One thing that we've done is she does something every single month, once a month, with the entire staff of wives, girlfriends, fiancés. You know, they've rented out movie theaters or they'll go eat dinner at different places. You know, this is a tough profession. You're gone a lot. And so we wanted to make sure that everybody felt, and this is just not the coaches. This is the training staff, their wife, the equipment staff, their wives, the strength staff, their wives. If you are a part of Texas Tech football, they do other stuff together, maybe in little parts, but they're all going to do something together. And it's just trying to develop those friendships, you know, that they have. That these wives sometimes don't feel like they're alone, that they have people that they can count on. And, man, she's amazing. I have not had a coach or equipment or anybody not come up and go, man, we cannot thank you enough for Debbie and the way she treats our wives, you know, and it's a big part of it, you know, that we are a family and that creates that culture.
I know the pasta bar is important to you. You got the Sunday bar. What's new? Is there anything new for Texas Tech on the horizon pregame, or are you just keeping with what's going?
No, we're going to keep with what's going. I mean, we are going to go out a day early for Wyoming. We're going to do our Fast Friday in the altitude, you know, to kind of get used to it. We're going to do the same thing against BYU. two really, really important games. But, we're creatures of habit of how we're going to do things and what we're doing. And so we're going to eat the same way.
For those who don't know, Joey McGuire eats the exact same thing the night before a game. Can you walk us through the pasta bar order for yourself?
Yeah, so I'm going to get some bell peppers. I'm going to get some garlic. If they have, which most of the times they do, just because Hannah takes care of me, I'll get some fresh jalapeno peppers that are cut up. Then I'm going to get some kind of chicken. I'm going to get the bow tie. Bow tie and the Alfredo sauce. And that's my go-to every Friday night.
Speaking of every Friday night before a game, Oregon's coming in week 2. I know you got a game before that, but how excited are you to see Jones at night, a big game, probably like Fox News there or something like that? Like what is that game going to represent for Texas Tech?
It's great. They're as good as anybody we have on our schedule. Their coaching staff is elite. They've done a great job of recruiting. And so it's a big – when you're sitting there and you're talking about week 2, some of the big games, and there are some really big games in the Big 12. You got Texas, Alabama that week. You've got Baylor, Utah that week. You have us in Oregon. So some really, really good games that week. It's going to be a measuring stick of like where we're at. They're a team that, has been in the top 10, top 15 year in and year out. And so we're going to get to find out. I'm glad whenever it came out, we were playing them at night. There's always good things that happen in Lubbock at night. And so I'm excited about that game.
Going this time last year, I think you had a good idea of what your team was, but you can't know it, right, until you see it on the field. How much more do you know about your team and the program right now than maybe you did media days last year?
A lot, just because we're in year 2. It's one of those deals that they know me. They've been asking a lot about camp, and the one reason they've been asking a lot about camp is we have like a mini camp that's a really grind. Got that from Matt Rule. And so they're asking, hey, are you changing anything up? And so it's really interesting because they know what's coming up. They know, that's the one thing. We're going to modify and adjust, but we are still creatures of habit, especially when things work. You try to replicate it. And so I feel like I have a good feeling for this team. We feel we've got a great chance to be a good football team. We just got to stay healthy, and we do have to handle we got to be able to handle both. Some failures throughout games or even a week, and then we got to be able to handle success. There was a time last year that we didn't handle a success, and it rolled into 2 losses, back-to-back losses, and so I think a more mature team understands we got to be able to handle those and separate each week.
Speaking of handling stuff, expectations are a lot higher this year, right? You picked 4th in the conference ahead of a team that played for a national championship. How do you get them to be okay with kind of being, maybe the hunted rather than the hunter at times this year in a way that maybe y'all weren't last year?
I think a lot of that is early preseason before you get hit in the mouth in a game. And we have such a tough schedule, and so we're going to find out early. Wyoming, their brand of football is very physical, and he does a phenomenal job. And so I think a lot of that is going to take care of itself. But my job is to be able to handle those. I want it. I'd rather be on that end than the other end, and to where people don't expect a lot from you. I know you can always surprise people, or you think you can, but I don't necessarily think that there's a lot of surprises week in and week out whenever you're a good football team. And so that's part of my job and the coaching staff job is to be able to handle the expectation. We are an older team. We have some very strong voices in that locker room. And so I think, some of them are here. They're going to be able to help me.
Coaching school next week.
Yeah,
I know that's a favorite of yours. Last question before we get out of here. Am I invited to the party?
Yeah, come on, man. Okay. It's 6 to 8, Little Woodrow's.
All right, I'll be there. All right, later. Thanks, Coach.
Thanks again to Texas Tech head coach Joey McGuire for always making time for us. He always seems to, it doesn't matter how much he talks. It feels like he always makes some time for us. Also, go check out, Mallory did a great job of getting all those interviews up that we did at Big 12 Media Days. Go check those out. I talked to fellow Maynard grad Taj Brooks, Texas Tech running back. Carter talked to a few humans that are massively bigger than him. Jared Wiley.
That was the funniest thing. I was like, Carter, you look short, and you're not
really
a short
small.
guy.
Yeah, he's like 6'6". Jared Wiley's like 6'6".
You
250. Yeah.
He's like looking down at you.
Here, sir.
Yeah.
I had to adjust the tripod. I was like, okay, hang on, guys. Whoosh!
Yeah.
Like way up there.
And he had a giant medallion with his name on it. It was
yeah,
Jared Wiley rules.
that was awesome.
So yeah, go check out all those interviews. We also got Mike Craven also talked to Dana Holgerson as well. At Big 12 Media Days, we were camped out there in our little booth for the whole time. So
you have to check out the Tony Bradford Jr. Jalen Hutchings video.
One of the best we've
ever
done.
That one, I wasn't behind the scenes for that one. And when I came over, Craven, Mallory, Ish, all like, that was so funny. And I was like, okay, like maybe they're just hyping up it. Then I watched it. And I made the mistake of watching it in the office.
Oh, he was like, I just heard him laughing across the office. I was like, what is he doing right now? And he comes over. He's like, I just saw the interview. I was like,
I apologize in advance for Ish and I because you can clearly hear us in the background just cackling for most of the time because it's so funny.
It'd be everyone talking in the mic, and then all of a sudden you hear like Mallory in the background. Like, you're up 5-4.
Yeah. They were wanting me to keep score, and I was like, oh, I don't want to be anyone's enemy in this, but it was so good.
Yeah, it was really good. So go check out all of those. So yeah, a little bit about Big 12 Media Days. We have some pieces up. Carter, listen. Let's talk a little bit about this one, actually. Brett Yormark gave his opening remarks.
Yep.
Obviously, a big year for the Big 12, kind of final year with Texas and Oklahoma. By the way, Joe Castiglione and CDC were at coaching school giving a panel together, which I thought was interesting.
Yes,
but
right.
Brett Yormark kind of gave a state of the conference. You know, what did you want to hit on, or what you kind of notice from his kind of remarks at Big 12?
The first thing I noticed was the last Big 12 Media Days I went to was in 2021, and the difference between Brett Yormark and Bob Bowlesby as just stage presence is night and day.
You can tell one of them came from Rock Nation.
Yeah, you can tell one of them came from Rock Nation. I think Brett Yormark is honestly, he's been a very good hire. I genuinely think he's doing a very good job. You know, some of the big announcements, and I hit on them in the piece, but he's bringing halftime performances now to the Big 12 championship game in Arlington. That's going to be in Arlington through 2030. You know, obviously added 4 new schools. Realignment talk, he said nothing. He basically said, if we have 12, we're good with 12, but we're also looking to expand. So in other words, like, okay, that we all knew that anyway. But we didn't expect him to really go into that. I think he's really working at making the Big 12, like he had talked about, younger, hipper, cooler. The only thing I worry about with Gonzaga being floated as potential basketball only, and then the Big 12 doing some events at Rucker Park is like Big 12 becomes Diet Big East.
Right.
Boy, that is like the only concern I have with them. Other than that, I think they're doing exactly what they need to be doing. And to try as hard as they can to keep pace, you know, with the SEC and Big Ten, obviously.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the only thing I have a little concern about too is they lose they've already kind of lost their geographic footprint a little bit, right? With West Virginia coming in, it's kind of like, okay, where's it used to be kind of like a nice heartland, conference, and now it's kind of like, BYU now. It's so like, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I do wonder, like, okay, if they had Gonzaga. They're doing a thing in Rucker Park. You know, it's like...
That was one of their pitches they had was like, we're in 3 different time zones now. And I was like...
I don't think that's a good thing. I don't think that's a good thing. The SEC is cool because, like, it's the best teams in the Southeast, right? Like, in my opinion, that's what... It's a reason. College football is a regional sport. Like college athletics is regional, right? UCLA does not care about Ohio State, right? So that's going to be weird when they're playing in the Big Ten.
He basically stood up there and had like a bulletin board list. I felt like I was in like a corporate pitch meeting. Everything they had done this far, and it's like sign the new 6-year media rights deal. All right, awesome. Going into Big 12 Mexico. All right, awesome.
Good,
in 3 different time zones. What?
I was like, that's not.
Well, that's
back
a
up a little bit. I like Central. I don't know. But I will say, so we've had a couple pieces up on the Big 12 Media Day. Carter's just went up today. Second of Carter's went up today. He talked about Texas as well and kind of what makes this year different for Texas. But today also went up was Texas Tech and how their roster is the most balanced it's been, right? We mentioned it before that we talked to them. They brought Tony Bradford and Jalen Hutchings, 2 defensive linemen. When's the last time you heard Texas Tech having 2 defensive linemen?
Any defensive players in general.
That matter, right? And so, like, it is this kind of the year that kind of a seismic shift happens in terms of like the expectations and the perceptions of Texas Tech. That was a good piece. You did a really good job on that one, by the way. And
Thank you.
Yeah, that one's up right now on TexasFootball.com. Go check that one out. Craven has a piece up over. Well, he has an upcoming piece. I will say we're going to hint on it. You'll notice that there's no Baylor yet. We are shelving that for something a little bit bigger, closer to the season. We're going to hold on to that because as we were talking about some content we were doing, we were like, you should probably save some of this content. So
we didn't forget about you, Baylor.
We did not forget about you. We did not forget about you at all. So we have some stuff on Houston as well. Who'd I forget? TCU, of course. TCU was there, kind of the big. A lot more people were paying attention to Sonny Dykes and TCU this year than they were last year. So.
Exactly.
And then next week, a little bit about this, almost happening simultaneously. AAC on Tuesday, Wednesday, right? Or Monday, Tuesday, and then CUSA on Tuesday. Basically like 50 yards apart. One's going to be in, one's going to be at Choctaw, one's going to be at Globe Life, and we'll be there. I'll be at both AAC days, and then we'll split up. We'll see who's going where on Conference USA. With no offense to Sam and UTEP, I felt like the whole staff didn't need to go and swarm up at Conference USA, so I'm holding back and I'm staying at AAC. But we'll be bringing you as much content as we can. We'll get a lot of player interviews. Probably won't do as much coaching interviews because we've talked to all these guys already at coaching school. So we'll be talking to even some out-of-state coaches players, out-of-state players as well.
There's so many former Texas high school football players that are, out of state in the American Athletic Conference especially.
Yes.
Yeah, I was looking at the list earlier, and I specifically checked Memphis because I was like, I bet $1,000 that Seth Hennigan's going to be one of the players that Memphis brings in. Yeah, he'll be there. So along with a couple of other. And
I gave Carter his first ever mandatory assignment.
Yep.
I told him he's interviewing Will Harbor because Will Harbor used to punish Frisco when he was at Reedy multiple times. So
no.
Carter has very personal experience.
Strong feelings.
With Navy linebacker Will Harbor. So
I've had my face mask shoved in the turf by Will Harbor once in a while.
So
please ask him about that.
The minute I saw him, I was like, Carter, you have one assignment at AC Media Days, and it's to talk to Will Harbor.
Hey, remember me? We used to have some really
Nightmare
great battles
fuel.
back in the day.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, you were the gum on my shoe as a senior.
Oh, that's mean. That's dirty.
Hence, hence why we're in two different roles at Media Days.
That's why you're talking to me, pal. No.
That's why.
So yeah, we'll be there. We'll be keep it tuned to TexasFootball.com at DCTF and at DCTFCFB on Twitter.
Yes.
All of our individual accounts as well. And I think that'll do it for us.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to save the rest of my voice for what I have and probably not talk the rest of this week until I have to talk to some of these players next week.
I honestly thought it sounded great after the opening. I think
that was great. Honestly, the crack at the beginning, it was a little shaky, but you recovered pretty well.
We recovered.
Yeah, we recovered pretty well. So please subscribe on TexasFootball.com. We will be pumping out all of our continued magazine coverage over the course of the summer. And, of course, all the college stuff will be rolled out as it comes. Again, AAC Media Days, Conference USA next week. Keep it tuned. Video interviews, pieces, all that stuff. So thank you for listening. Subscribe on Apple and Spotify to not only hear us, but all of our family of podcasts on the Republic of Football. Remember, promo code DCTF on homefieldapparel.com, and we will talk to you guys later. Remember, we have talked to 12 of 13 FBS head coaches. Jimbo Fisher, please give us a call, and go Rutgers.
Go Rutgers.